Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 16th, 2023 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly thereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Seeing none, pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023 extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Subsection 20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. First action of the evening is to do a roll call for quorum. Select Board Member Nicastro.
Present.
Select Board Member Davis.
Present.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Present.
Select Board Member Shell.
Present.
And the Chair, Select Board Member Corey Metters is present. We have two sets of minutes this evening. First, May 9th and May 12th. I will start with a motion for May 9th if possible, please.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any corrections, omissions, Nothing? All right, we have a motion. Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Minutes approved. Next is the set of minutes for May 12th, 2023. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I hear a
Second.
second? Any corrections, omissions? None. I'm on a roll here. Select Board Member DeCastro.
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Aye.
Select Board Member Shell.
Aye.
And Chair says aye. All right. Public announcements and agenda item requests. I do have some announcements. I'm going to start with the board first. I know the chief has an announcement and any other public, and then I will take the floor after that. So I will start. I believe, Mr. Davis, you have a
Yes.
public announcement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations. I wanted to just give a public thank you to Chief Tavano for having the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaderships Association meeting at Chatham Fire Department. They were extremely accommodating. The room was great. I'd like to thank Ryan Damon for his help with our tech. The group met last Friday morning. We had a pretty robust meeting. We were talking about the Mass DEP Title V regulation changes, amongst some other things that the group has been working on across for the last year. So, as president of that organization, Chief, thank you very much.
Okay. Select Board Member Shell, I believe you have one.
Yeah, I just wanted to call, probably most people saw it, but I wanted to call everybody's attention who didn't see it to the article, I think it was last Thursday or Friday in the Boston Globe. The title was "This Faux Nantucket Just Might Be the Perfect Cape Town." It focused very, very shortly in the introduction on the Netflix movie, but it launched into a kind of a travel log that really did a wonderful, wonderful job of walking through all of Chatham, gave us high marks across the board. If somebody here helped the authors with it, it looked like somebody with a PR background might have helped them, but one way or the other, it's a great article, so I want to call everybody's attention to it.
Michael, what was that, last week?
Yeah, last Thursday or Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Select Board Member Dykens.
I got a quick one, just following up on an email we got from Darren Saletta about the condition of the fields. I know that Jill and Rob Faley are on it, but I just want to make an agenda item request just to make sure we circle back and make sure that stuff gets done. The fields were awful, so we got to pay attention to them. We got some work to do in the near term because it's Little League season right now. So I just want to make sure we stay on it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Selectman DeCastro.
Yeah, I would like to join in that request. I was going to make that request, and then I saw Jill's email this morning, so I was going to hold back. But since Jeff put it forward, I'd like to be part of that. Thank you.
That's fine. Chief Anderson, I believe you have an announcement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I am here tonight as the staff liaison from the Public Ceremonies Committee. Just a reminder that the town's annual Memorial Day ceremony is Monday, May 29th at 10 a.m. At the World War I Memorial located in the front lawn of the Chatham Community Center. I would like to add that the Public Ceremonies Committee currently has 3 vacancies. So the committee is looking for any current or former military service member or any veteran, any past or present police officer or firefighter, any scout, or any other individual with experience in ceremonial observances. The Public Ceremonies Committee is responsible for the planning, organizing, and the oversight of the town's Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremonies, or any other service that merits public observance. If anybody's interested, they can find out more about the Public Ceremonies Committee and how to apply on the town website. I would look forward to anybody who's interested to contact me, and I can assist them, and welcome anybody to the Public Ceremonies Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the public have an announcement or agenda item request? Is there anyone online that has a public announcement or agenda item request? Okay, that leaves me. Couple items. Chair announcement on board reorganization and annual town election results. Thank you, Town Manager, for putting this on the agenda. As you can see, faces are the same. We did a little bit of musical chairs, but I want to first start with congratulating Select Board Member Shireen Davis for her re-election for the next 3 years for the board. We had a very good turnout at on last Thursday. I also want to congratulate the Monomoy Regional School Committee members, Jackie Zebrat Long and Elizabeth Gray, for their re-elections for another 3-year term, and Joanne Scotty Finnegan on a successful write-in campaign for the 1-year unexpired term. Also, a shout out and congratulations to Bruce Bean on his reappointment to the Housing Authority. So, full slate was reappointed. I thank you all for volunteering your time and efforts to the community, and I think everyone appreciates your efforts. Question 1 through 5. Basically, question 2, successful, the $4.8 million on the transfer station. Question 3, Prop 2.5 for the $4.5 million, the water treatment plant. Question 4, the Charter Review Committee. And question 1, just want to put a couple things out for facts. We are not going to get into the weeds of these discussions tonight, but just kind of how we are moving forward. So question 1 was the COA funding. It did pass 624 to 481 votes. This board, obviously, between town meeting and the ballots results from last Thursday, we'll have to decide on what are the quote next steps. In the upcoming weeks, I'd like to schedule between the town manager, staff, the Council of Aging Committee, what exactly that is going to look like. We obviously need to evaluate what transpired over the last 2 events and where our efforts should be focused. Obviously, there's been a lot of questions about a special town meeting. The town clerk has received several inquiries about that process. And there's a process out there, and we will wait and see if anything becomes of that. As part of the process moving forward, I have, as most of you are aware of, have a conflict with any discussions directly associated with 1610 Main Street. And because of that, any agenda item moving forward, I cannot drive the bus on. I cannot put it on. I cannot push it one way or another. So I will defer to my colleagues if they wish to have discussions about calling a special town meeting, not calling a special town meeting, or anything specifically addressing 1610 Main Street. So that, from a procedural point of view, I want to be clear on. I'd also like to, in the next couple weeks, at least discuss, we have one citizen suggestion that we create like a, I don't want to use the term super group, but another citizen group to maybe evaluate and weigh in what could be the best method moving forward for a new COA, or Center of Active Living. And I think at the very least, this board should discuss, do we support that process? Do we have questions about that process? If we support it, how we're going to move it forward. So I do think that is noteworthy to have a discussion on over the next couple weeks. But, we have a lot to go forward. We have some decisions to make. We are not forced to go in one direction or another, but clearly we are going to have some discussions about what to do in the quote next steps regarding the COA and the process concerning that. So it's not going to be a discussion tonight, but it is going to be on our agendas moving forward. I'd like to do it shortly to kind of keep the discussion fresh, but that is kind of where we are for the board. So with that, I'm going to get into our regular business agenda. First item on our agenda is a public hearing for a change of manager for Eastwood Ho Country Club. Evelyn Liu, is anyone online?
Want me to read it, Corey?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll read the public notice. Town of Chatham Select Board, public hearing notice. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 16, 2023, at 5:30 PM in the large meeting room at the Town Office Annex 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, and remotely via Microsoft Teams platform to consider a request for a change of manager to the annual all-alcoholic beverages club license for Eastwood Ho Country Club, Inc., from Edmund McGuire to Evelyn Liu. All interested parties are encouraged to participate.
Thank you, Mr. Dykens.
Thank you.
Is there a representative from Eastwood Ho on? No? No? Okay. Pretty straightforward request. Does anyone have any questions about the paperwork in front of us?
I do not. I do know Evelyn, she's been there before. I worked with her before there, and she's wonderful, so
Okay.
welcome back.
If there's no questions, does someone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Second.
Okay, second. It is a public comment, public hearing, so I should actually ask for public comment if anyone has any questions or comments about the public hearing. Seeing none, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further questions? No? Selectman Nacastro?
Aye.
Selectman Davis?
Aye.
Selectman Dykens?
Aye.
Selectman Michelle?
Aye.
And I say aye. All right. Next item is a utility pole inventory status about the repair and replacement of improvements of electrical grid service of Chatham. We are going to have discussions from various representatives, and we are going to offer or encourage public questions and participation during this item too. So with that being said, Ms. Goldsmith, you want to kick this off?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packet is just a one-page summary of how we got here. So the Select Board at your meeting most recently of March 7th have requested an update by the electricity service providers on the condition and integrity of our utility poles in town and the plans to address such, the deficient poles and enhancements to the reliability of our electrical service. We've had a couple of concerns that have been expressed in recent events. And so with that, I had invited the leadership of Eversource Verizon and also reached out to Comcast and Open Cape as I do have positions on the utility poles. With us tonight that I see in the audience, representatives from Eversource include Ronnie Goldstein and Mike Pierce. Mike is the manager of electric field operations, as well as Verizon with Ellen Cummings. And then we received an email earlier today from Stephanie Lee, who's the Vice President of State and Local Government Affairs for New England and Central, who's not able to be present tonight. So with that, we had some agenda topics that we, as a group, we've met twice, once on March 30th to discuss what the issues were and how the tracking system works for the utility companies, and also looking at the double poles, leaning poles, the field progress to date, and follow up on our recent outage events and how they were communicated, as well as look at our electrical capital projects. We had a subsequent meeting on April 28th, so also with Ronit and Ellen. Both meetings did include town representatives from public safety, so we had the police chief, deputy chief, fire chief, deputy fire chief, as well as our DPW director. So tonight, I'm hoping that the utility companies are able to report on progress and answer any questions that you or the public may have. And we've committed to having monthly meetings moving forward. Thank you.
Great. Would any of the representatives who are present want to step forward and introduce themselves possibly?
Mr. Chair, I see that we have Steve Johnston from Open Cape participating remotely.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Chair Matters, members of the board, town manager. My name is Ronit Goldstein. I'm with Eversource Energy, cover community relations. As Jill mentioned, I have with me Mike Pierce, who's the manager of electric field operations, which is the lineman organization. He's the head of that organization on the Cape. I did notice, I believe, that we have Comcast on the line as well. Jill, just to show that we have all of the utilities working here together. So I think what I had intended to do was sort of frame, and Ellen Cummings from Verizon, frame the agenda, but I think it's in this memo that you've received from your town manager. The first item being double poles, the initiative and leaning poles, or the double poles issue that was raised to us, leaning poles, how we meet monthly, any field progress to date, and what the intention is moving forward. Then I will have Ellen do that, and then she will kick it back to me to follow up on a couple of outages that were of concern in the March wind event. I believe it was March 4th, was a Saturday early morning, 2 events that were brought to my attention. And then I have a list of some current capital project or recent capital projects, kind of a look ahead into this year and next year, so the next 2 years, as well as a 3 to 5 year plan for improvement of, reliability, things that are in our capital plan for the town of Chatham.
All right, thank you.
Great. So with that, with your permission, I'm going to kick it to Ellen to get started on some of the progress that we've made to date by meeting monthly with your town, your public safety officials and your staff.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for, my name's Ellen Cummings. I'm the Director of State Government Affairs for Verizon in Massachusetts, and I handle the Cape and the Islands. Just to be clear, that Eversource and Verizon, we do joint own the poles in Chatham. However, it is my responsibility, Verizon's responsibility for maintenance of the poles, which also means we set them. And when everyone's transferred off a pole, it's also my responsibility to remove the wood. So as far as that concerned, we'll handle the double poles first, if that's all right with you. So when we have, there's road projects, construction work, any kind of economic development, also when other attachees want to attach to a pole, we have to sometimes put a taller pole out there. There's sometimes accidents, there are weather events that have increased on the Cape. All those situations can create a double pole. So basically, as you know, that's a pole that has the older pole that has or the current pole that has all the attachees on it. Then we come and place a new pole next to it. And then there is a transfer order. Eversource is always on the top. I'm always on the bottom. And then in between, you could have a third-party attachee, a fiber. You could have fire alarm. You can have a street light on it. You can have Comcast would be on it. Then again, I'm on the bottom. So when we transfer from the top to the bottom. In order to track that, I'm sorry, and Steve, I didn't mean to, I think you're online. Open Cape is also on a lot of those poles. So when we have a double pole that's created, we will set a new pole. It's my company's responsibility to go into a database that we all use, Eversource and myself, we fund that. There's no cost to a municipality if they have municipal attachments on it. We will go in and we'll make a ticket for the new pole that we put out there. At that point, once the ticket goes in, the ticket gets moved over to Eversource and says, hey, this pole out here is ready for you to transfer onto the new pole. So we say that's ball in court or next to go. So once Eversource goes out and transfers down, over to the new pole, they will go into the ticket and they will do the same. They will move the ticket over to whoever's next on it. And that's how it comes eventually to me. And then we go out. Verizon has a metric that we have to hit. We don't like to see a double pole sitting with us for more than 30 days. So we will go out, we will transfer onto the new pole, and because it's my maintenance area, at the same time, I will take the old pole, we call it the dead wood, with us and leave. So that is the process that we use. That's the database that others as well as us use. Folks that want to attach the pole, they have to apply to each of us individually for a license to attach. So that's how we know who else is on the pole. So one of the things there was an excess of double poles in Chatham. When we all started to meet, we talked about it. And as I said, the first one who has to move is Eversource per the electrical code and how they are on the pole. From our meetings, and also Mike attended one of the meetings, I know that Eversource was able to put some resources on double poles. In Chatham, they've done a lot of work in the past couple months. They've actually transferred over on 90-plus poles, which has allowed those double poles to move to the next person who's attached. So we're going to be working with that. We will be reviewing it when we meet every month. But in the meantime, we'll also be talking to each other. I know Jill was just sending an email, and we were just talking about a pole that we removed that came into my court today on Old Queen Anne. So that is how we handle double poles. If you have any questions, I can stop now, or I can go into the other issue with checking leaning poles and things like that.
Does the board have any questions at the moment? Mike?
I just want to clarify, did I understand you to say there's a 30-day period?
Well, I have that, Verizon does. We have to report out, my folks, per territory, if we are tracking that. So if a Comcast is usually right above me, so if they move the ticket and it comes over to me and it says, time for you to transfer, the clock starts ticking. And every month we have to report in, and our leadership looks and says, did you get rid of that pole within 30 days? And we do a very good job of that. So, like, for example, the average right now in Chatham, I think there's 15 double poles that are sitting in my court, and the average time it sat there, the aging time is 7 days. So once it does get to us, we're trying to do the best we can within 30 days to get that pole, get off that pole and get that wood out of there.
So I think I misunderstood, but I want to clarify. My question was, from the time that you alert Eversource that it's time for them to move their equipment onto the new pole until the old pole is removed, I thought I understood you to
No,
say that was 30
I
days.
apologize if that was confusing.
Okay, so what you're said, the 30 days is just the time from which you are alerted that it's time for you to put your equipment on the pole. You have 30 days to get your equipment on the pole and remove the old pole.
Yes, that is what we
So there could
try.
be, there's no time notionally from the time that Eversource moves onto the new pole until you get a notice. Is that a fair assumption?
I'm really not comfortable talking for Eversource.
I'm trying to just get an understanding, or at least a general concept of what is the duration of time from when the green flag is waved at Eversource until it gets to you to put your equipment on.
Wouldn't it be safe to,
That,
well, I'm sorry to step in, but wouldn't it be safe that there's a variable depending on who's in the middle?
yes, exactly. So it
That's-
can take a while. There can be, as you see out on Main Street, for example, some of those poles, there are a lot of attachees, there are a lot of attachments on it or equipment. There are some poles that are out there that Eversource is on them, street light is on them, fire alarm is on there, third-party fiber's on it, Open Cape is on it. I should probably step
Well, let me ask
Open
the
Cape,
question
so
a
that-
different
so
way, if
everyone
I
has
may.
to.
Does each individual company have a 30-day or some other day deadline to
I
move the
can't speak for the other
equipment?
companies.
No, and this isn't, Ellen, just to clarify, this is an internal metric. It's not a regulatory requirement. So it's an internal metric for the company, just to clarify the difference. I think we'd all like to see transfers happen within a reasonable amount of time. I think one thing that should be noted is that one driver that I think is missed with double poles is infrastructure improvement. And so every time we build a new line, and that's one of the big improvements in town, typically that means new wire, new equipment, heavier, more robust infrastructure, and that typically new poles are installed next to the old ones. So you can get rid of 50, and Mike can attest in certain towns, you get rid of, you transfer 50 and you start that process of moving down the pole, and then we have a project on, say, Route 6A in Orleans, which I know we do, and 70 new poles get installed. So it's a fluid number. That's just something that needs to be clear. You make progress, but with new pieces of infrastructure, with new capital improvements, new poles are installed.
Road widening projects,
right.
for example?
So that just, I know that didn't specifically answer the timing question, but it's going to be a running list
Okay. Selectwoman Davis.
perpetuity,
Yes,
probably.
thank you. So I understand that you are talking about a time, you can't describe a time, you can't give us an exact time for each of the entities to get off the pole and jump on to the next one. But there must be, whoever's taking the leadership on that pole getting removed, there must be some sort of, average time frame that you look at and say, a double pole is removed, everybody signs off, there must be some sort of average. That's a business plan, action. It's an item that you would have something like that, you would know. You're saying that you have projects in other towns and you might bring in poles at the same time to work on something else, but give us an average, tell us. We're looking at the 30-day Verizon number really is a moot number when we're looking at the idea that some of the poles have been around for a very long time and people are concerned about their safety of those poles. Is there a number out there? That's my question.
Yeah,
There
I
isn't-
couldn't say, and I just want to make sure we're clear that a double pole is not an unsafe pole. I know there's concerns, and I'm not doubting that, but they're not the same. So you can have a perfectly brand-new pole. Am I right in saying that, Ellen? That a double pole
you
doesn't
could have
equal an unsafe pole. You have a former lineman standing right next to us. I don't know if you have anything to say on this matter, Mike, but
I'd like to just,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
you say, so one of the reasons, one of the things I can say is my background with Verizon is operations, so I'm not coming in just speaking off of a script that I read. So a lot of times, I see what you're saying, and there are times that a poll is, we do go out, we look at a poll and we say, you know what, we do a survey of it, it's time to replace that poll. So there are those polls that, particularly from the big the 2020 survey we did, where we checked other polls. We went through and we find, polls, we're gonna change that one, it's time. But there are other polls that are done because of, for example, a road opening project, or widening it, for example. Most of those polls are just because they need to be moved, so we're setting the new poll. So there are all, I see what you're saying, but they're definitely all over. It could be a lot of reasons why a double poll is created. But again, with that said, and, there's not, the database is what manages double polls, okay? So when it comes to somebody It is their responsibility. I can't go out and I can't transfer for them because I have the maintenance on it. So everybody has their responsibility, but it's also their responsibility to go into the database and make sure you move it so the person that's next knows that this is sitting for you to go.
Okay.
I want to ask this, I'm going to try to clarify. So internally, you have a 30-day internal, that's the metrics you use for your piece of the puzzle.
I do.
Would it be safe to say that 30-day is probably a standard window for most of the parties that are involved in the process? Do you find that an average or a typical window per party?
No. We
No.
can, yeah. It's
okay.
not real, it's not a realistic goal
Shorter
for
or
the
longer?
utility.
Longer?
Indeterminate.
From whatever source standpoint, it's longer.
Yeah.
Longer, okay. So 30 plus per party, and depending on how many parties are on it, it's safe to say the process is fairly lengthy. I think that's what the answer that we're looking for is, it's a fairly lengthy process.
Yes.
Yes.
Because there are more than one person, right, there are many entities
Yeah.
involved.
Okay. Selectman Dykens, you have a question?
No, I wanted to finish my
Go ahead,
thought,
go ahead, Ms.
Corey.
Davis, and
Thank you
I'll
very much.
pipe in.
So it's
Thanks,
safe
Mike.
to say that we could have double polls for a considerable amount of time.
A municipality will never be 100% free of double
Okay.
polls.
So I mean, we have citizens that have expressed concerns about, and we'll just take the safety off of it. I mean, there's a lot of aesthetic issues to having double polls in this community. And, I mean, is it safe to say we could have a certain double polls around our neighborhoods for years?
No. And the aesthetic issue is for every municipality.
Right.
It's not just Chatham. So people don't like double polls out there for many reasons. So we are committed, and there's been a lot of progress made in the past few months. So there will not be the amount of double polls that there are in Chatham when we started moving forward. They will be reduced down, and you will have, there will be a manageable amount. However, there will never be 0 double polls in any community, is
Understanding
what I'm
that.
saying.
What I'm trying to do is, because we have to answer to the townspeople, and when they ask this, I'm just trying to get is it safe to say we could have a double poll in the community for 6 to 9 months?
It is possible,
Okay.
because there are several attaches that
Okay.
need to come off it.
Thank you for answering the
Yes.
question.
Selectman
Can I follow up on that?
Please.
So, just to follow up and kind of highlight what she said, was there will never be 0 double polls, right? So, for example, we have a lot of reliability projects going on all over the Cape. We do have reliability projects going on in Chatham as well. So while we're doing these double pole removals, we are also building in other areas of the town. So kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, for instance, in Orleans, last year, we had an excess of poles. We removed, I think there was 100. We removed 90. There was a net gain of, because of that project.
Right,
There
on
was a net
6A.
gain of 10 poles. So it ended up being 106 poles at the end of the 90 that we removed. So there is a lot of that goes on, just because of the improvements that we're doing.
Right, and one thing that I will note with all of the electrification goals in the state, in the Commonwealth, on the Cape, I'm sure in the town, you're gonna see more infrastructure, and that does include new poles. So that's something that folks have to realize.
All right.
And
Jeff,
since,
then Dean, then Mike. So Jeff?
Thank you, Corey. So I just want to back up for a second. The reason why we have a double pole is that the pole was considered to be unsafe and needed to be replaced?
No,
Okay.
that's
So just back up for me
reason.
for just a second. Why do we have double poles?
So we have, there are those cases where, say, something was in an accident, or we come in, my folks come in, we take a look at it, and say, you know what, we're going to condemn this pole. We think it's gone its lifetime, we're going to replace the pole. There are weather events sometimes, but also there are electrical projects, there are road widening projects, there are other, new developments that go in where new poles need to be set in. Other attachees come in and want to put their fiber on a pole, and there has to be, per the electrical code, so much distance between attachee, and you can only go so low. So a lot of times we have to put a taller pole out there so everybody can raise up and have the required amount of space. For all those reasons, a double pole can and will be created.
Right.
Gotcha, thank you, that's helpful. I do have a follow-up or two. So, never mind the double poles, I think what has got the citizens here and the select board most interested in the issue is we had poles falling down on people or in vehicles or in the road. So, what kind of surveys are you guys doing to ensure that those poles that are considered unsafe are identified and then replaced? So I'd like to know where Chatham is in that queue, how many you've identified, and how many are subject to replacement, number one.
So we just did a survey, so we have a program where we'll go into, not just Chatham, we will go into every single municipality on a rotating basis, and we will do a survey of every single pole in that municipality. These are the ones that I have maintenance for. So we started during the pandemic in Chatham in 2020, and in 2021, we completed all of our work. We ended up surveying, I think I wrote it down, no problem. We did, at that time, 3,977 polls were in Chatham. And out of those, 100 even were actually slated for replacement and were replaced. There are some that didn't need replacement, but we did want to do some additional work on them. And we put those trusses on 474 of them.
So you mitigated or attempted to mitigate 574 out of 3,977 is the way I read that. Okay. All right, that's helpful. And then the other burning question I have, and I'll use the bully pulpit here while I have it, is our second feed, Ronnie.
Yep.
Where are we with respect to the second feed that's in theory going to come through Harwich rather than through Orleans?
Sure. So we have that's a multi-year project. So I have it built into what we've done recently. So because it's coming, and again, you could quantify if you're from the area how many miles it is from the Harwich substation on Lothrop Ave all the way out to Chatham. That's miles. So what we did do in recent is we did an underground. So we do underground where it makes sense. And we built 2,000, it's almost 3,000 feet, so 2,900 foot duct bank and manhole system on South and Gilbert to facilitate, so it goes down a pole, goes underground through that whole section past the golf course. And it will be part of, that was just the infrastructure, what we consider the non-electric. The next step in this year and next year will be to string the cable through and do all of the electric work that's required in that project. At the same time, we'll start to work on all of the infrastructure that needs to be improved along Route 28. And that is the new feed that you're speaking about. So that is, again, when we talk about double poles, that's going to be, I can't quantify how many poles because that is still in design, but that's looking at the next 3 to 5 years of that whole project being completed. Potentially sooner, but because of the distance, the time of year restriction, any rights that need to be obtained, and any additional, we have to piecemeal for a lot of reasons. Part of it is the time.
Is there anything we can do as a municipality to speed that up?
Did you want to say something, Mike?
Yes, and probably, but I'll have to follow up on that, but,
Probably was to the speeding it up question?
to the speeding it up,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sure there's permitting and rights that we could probably speed up, but, I'll get back to you on that, but, that would be great. But in the meantime, we have installed auto transfer schemes to speed up restoration, to improve reliability to the town. We have voltage regulators improving power quality to the customers. It's on the table right now. Chatham's on the table. in addition to other towns, obviously, but it's,
Yeah, it's funny
it's-
because I thought about this whole list that Mike and I got from engineering, and a lot of it is familiar because it's familiar to me because I get involved either on the rights piece or other requests to be involved and be aware. You could see linemen out. You don't even know what they're doing, and they're installing a device that is a switch that's going to pick up, that allows us to flow power in different directions. Will pick up 4,000 customers in Chatham, and you wouldn't know. I mean, I wonder if periodically, and I offer this up, coming in once or twice a year or once a quarter and giving you some sort of update on things that are occurring, because I think we need to do a better job at telling the good things that we do and telling, the good stories and the improvements, things that sort of are out of sight, out of mind, were often remembered when the power is out or when something happens. So I offer that up, no need to answer whether you want it or not, but something to think about. Have me come in and, if it's next time bringing an engineer in to explain why, but they typically will identify poor performing circuits in poor performing areas. And as Mike said, Chatham is on the radar. So there's a lot, we have a whole page here. I didn't want to describe every single action, but I hope that gave you some flavor of where that new feed stands in terms of progress.
Just a comment, I think the second fee would really help. We would like it sooner rather than later. I would rather have it this year or early next. I mean, waiting 3 or 4 or 5 years for it is just probably not acceptable.
well, there is, that's why I was saying, it's important for us to focus on what is going on now, in addition to these larger projects. These large projects take time to design, they take time to mobilize, they take time to get parts, especially right now.
Yeah.
But we are doing stuff now to improve quality.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great.
Thanks, Mike.
Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming. Did someone?
Looks like it's Steve from Open Cape, Steve Johnston. I don't know if he, pardon.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
We
This
can.
is Steve at Open Cape. I wanted to apologize for not being there in person. First of all, I'm just on a job site off Cape today, so my apologies. I did want to not let Ellen throw herself on the sword regarding some of the double poles in downtown, in Main Street in Chatham. I will take responsibility. We had actually transferred off of 7 poles in downtown Main Street in Chatham. And our engineer on that project unfortunately did not update the database that Ellen is referring to, and that left a little bit longer life of those poles being on your streets. We've since done that, and we've alerted Ellen that we've transferred off those poles. We're also watching 5 others that we're going to need to transfer on very soon. So I want you to know that at least from our part, we are paying attention to this. We will transfer in a timely manner. While we don't have a 30-day minimum, it's really a byproduct of crew availability, getting enough to transfer to warrant a crew in one area. But one issue, one of the select board members mentioned how they might be able to speed the process up. For the last 12 months, getting details, police details, which are really a vital part of the safety process of doing any work, has been really a challenge across the Cape. And so sometimes we've had attempted to deploy crews to make transfers, and we simply could not get a police detail. And that's just simply a byproduct of a huge amount of work happening on the Cape. And it's something that every municipality should be aware of and maybe mention to the police chief regarding availability for police details, or letting us know further in advance we can arrange for flaggers if details are not available. So that's just one thing that may slow down transfers in some cases, particularly during the busy summer months. Thank you.
I'm thinking Chief Anderson may have a comment.
Great, thanks, Steve. I will like to add, Stephen is correct. And some of the things that have been brought to our attention is the lack of police details, not just Chatham police officers, but Cape police officers. And Mike came to a Cape Chiefs meeting 2 months ago to introduce a proposal to allow flagmen to be used if there were no Chatham police officers or outside agency police officers to be available. The concession is we would have the right of first refusal, but we also understand that this work needs to continue, and we don't want to be the agency responsible for holding up a project. So this year, unlike probably in my career that would have never happened 10 years ago, we've met with our police union, and we've received the concession that as long as we are notified first and we can't provide the service, we will gladly allow outside flagmen to assist the utilities in getting their projects completed. No problem with us.
All right, thank you.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming this evening. I'm familiar with your process of replacing old poles, because I had an experience basically in my own yard. It was actually a happy experience in the end, back pre-COVID, 2018. The only difficulty I had was in identifying or finding someone within Verizon who was responsive. And the person that ultimately did call back was very, very accommodating and explained the process. And it took many months, but that left me with the understanding that within each company, there really wasn't any transparent explanation as to why it would take so long to do the transfers. So I heard from the previous gentleman as to the difficulties within Open Cape, as the challenges they faced in finding crews and so forth. I just wonder, is there a prioritization within each company as to which poles are going to be transferred first, once Verizon sends the notice out, or your system sends the notice to Eversource or whoever's next?
Well, there are times, so for example, I just want to step back 1 second and say the meetings that we're having now monthly, that's something we do in other communities, and we find it very helpful. And when we do have those meetings as well, it helps us prioritize with a community as well. So if, for example, there's something that's going to be going on in a certain part of town, a certain road, or for example, Main Street, we're coming into the tourist season, we've asked those questions. Do you have, yes, we know you want to go faster, and we understand that, and we're going to work as hard as we can. But are there certain areas that you want us to focus on sooner rather than later? Then we also sometimes look at road projects. So, for example, if a road project or an upgrade is going on, many times it's easier for all of us. So we'll come in and we'll set the poles, and then Eversource will do their move over, and then you have, say, just Comcast is on there next, or Open Cape, for them to come in with their crews and just go right down the line. So everybody else, so I would stand back, Comcast would stand back, then they'll come, and we'll do that as a priority over other ones, because we can come out and get, for example, more done doing it that way. And we know the project needs to move quicker. You have pavers that are involved as well, things like that are on schedules. So there are sometimes, because we all have meetings and we meet with the Department of Public Works and these communities too. So sometimes there are those areas that we may do over other areas that are ready for transfer. So it really all depends. And it's just to say, and as far as the poll is that you had, I would be happy to take a look at it, but because sometimes it takes a while to get it going, because it has to go into engineering too. And they have to go out, they have to do a survey and take a look at it. So sometimes that can take longer as well.
Yeah, that's a completed project.
I understand that. I was just answering why it could
noticed
take so long.
I have hedges in the backyard, and one day I looked out and there was 6 feet of hedges that had been chopped down, and I was trying to determine who did it. And then I ultimately I first called Eversource, then I called Verizon. And as I say, Verizon, I still have my emails from the person that was working on it. She was really, really good, and explained to me, how this would proceed. It was the pole in question. I didn't request that it be taken down. It was an old New England telephone pole that probably went back to the 40s, and I guess Verizon must have come by and determined that it
probably was, yes,
replaced as part of your surveying. So in that case, it was done really nicely. It's just that it took a while, and I was trying to understand why within each company, or how within each company, you determine, what is the priority. I don't know if Eversource has a comment on that. I'm not talking about history here. I'm talking about current situation. I assume you still have a lot of these New England telephone poles still around.
No, not as many, not as
Okay.
many anymore. And a lot of them too, not because it's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
old survey but just because there's so much going on out there
Yeah.
with projects, other folks wanting to attach. So not anywhere near as many as there used to be, say, even if you went back 10 years ago.
Does Eversource have a comment on
Yeah.
how you prioritize?
Yeah, I understand the question. Yeah, our priorities and sometimes municipality priorities don't really align. Ours are with reliability, system resiliency. We want to get customers back. When you lose power, we want to restore you as fast as possible. If there's like she had mentioned earlier, if there's a safety concern, that's a priority. If there's a public safety concern, that's always a priority. If it's a broken pole, priority. But aesthetics generally is low on the priority list.
So just following up on that, to me, safety is the most important issue. So in the case, I'm going back to this particular situation. So Verizon came in, put the new pole in. This is back in 2018, so. And they did the same thing on another property on the same street. And I thought one of the new pole was, or the old pole, I can't remember, was leaning a little bit. So I contacted Verizon and asked whether they could put a strap around it. And they did come back and do that. So what determines whether you strap a belt around these poles while you're waiting for the other companies to come and do their transfers?
So there are a couple things. I'm not sure if you mean we strapped the old pole to the new one,
That's
or
what
if there was a guy wire.
No, this
It was strapped.
old to the new.
A lot of times when we go out, if we don't believe it's secure, after we take a look at it, we sometimes do put like a strap on it. Sometimes we'll take a piece of wood and put a bolt in each side and hold it together like that. It all depends on the survey that's being done when folks are out there.
So my final question for the moment is, the new poles seem to be taller than the old poles. Is that typical?
Is that
They're
what?
taller, is that typical?
Yes, because there's more attaches on there, you have more power lines on there now too. As I said before, we have more people that want to get on them now, so we like to definitely put the taller pole out there. So again, there has to be certain distances, but we always want to put it on there so there's room, so we don't have to turn around if somebody else applies for a license, wants to attach the pole, that there is room. I mean, sometimes we might have to move a little, but there is room per the electrical code without having to go through and changing a pole again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's generally because of the electric infrastructure and spacing and the equipment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike, you had a question?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right, before we move to the next bullet point, I want to just open it up to the public for any questions at the moment. Ms. Gibbs, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Elaine Gibbs. I have some questions and comments. In terms of the March 3rd incident at Taylor's Pond that happened when there was no weather event, some light rain, 5:30 in the morning, had that pole been checked was that one of the 3,977 poles that were checked?
Every single pole in the municipality of Chatham was checked.
Okay,
If you
so
just go
when
up to
that fell,
Just go up to the microphone. Sorry, it's okay, it's okay.
Yes. Every single pole was checked in Chatham at that time.
so because it fell over, do you know what caused it to fall over, if it had been checked and was considered safe?
I don't know at this time what called it. I do believe that there was some weather that was going on that day. I'm trying to remember which one it was.
So, yeah, if we're talking about Coco Cove Road,
Is that what we're talking about?
It was Taylor's Pond, yeah, it was.
So Eversource stood up its emergency response plan. We were in the middle of an ERP because of high wind.
There was
So
no one that morning. It was
perhaps there
raining.
wasn't, but we were across the state, we were activated, Mike's team. It was an early Saturday morning. There were 2 outages one involving a pole on Cocoa Cove and one involving a tap, which is infrastructure at the top of the pole. That was a larger outage on Old Queen Anne Road. So we had 2 outages that I was asked about. I didn't get a chance to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, we can think that it came as a result of a wind event, whether folks felt that it was windy or not. We were activated, and they don't activate and stand up the whole emergency response organization if there is an inclement weather coming in. So it's safe to, there were wind gusts in parts of the area, and I can't say exactly the cause, but I just wanted to clarify that it was during a wind event.
Okay, I guess my concern is that a wind event should not be taking down a solid pole. In this situation, we've had a couple situations, one last July, where there had a pole snapped, and that's when we all realized we had a problem. If it hadn't gotten caught up in the wires, it would have hit a car full of people. Then we had this event, and I understand that there are a lot of reasons for double poles. I don't think anybody here is concerned about the ones where you're putting them up for new service and everybody's got to transfer. We're concerned about the double poles that you're replacing because they've been compromised. That's what occurred on Old Queen Anne Road. And today at 4 o'clock, it finally got removed. That had been reported by multiple people in town, by our DPW. You were sent photographs of the snapped pole at around 357 Old Queen Anne Road. And until today, it has still been there. There was nothing had to be transferred. It was an empty pole. It was snapped. If that thing had fallen, it would have taken out service across the road, but more importantly, it would have hit a car. And we're told that we're supposed to notify people. There's another pole down the street from there. I think it's number 175, but you can't see the number anymore because it's a really old pole. So my next question is, I've seen poles around town. They're not smooth surfaces anymore. They're split vertically. You can see it. It's all open, and there are hundreds of holes in them. My understanding, 2 things cause holes in poles: woodpeckers and termites. And that's where you determine if it's penetrated because of the weather, because of all those holes, it deteriorates inside and it becomes compromised. I don't think you have to be an expert to see some of these poles and know they're not safe. And after this second event on March 3rd, another question I have is I had called because 1,400 people were out, and that's what it said. And I happened to get someone on the phone, and I asked what occurred. And she said, car meets pole. That was not what happened. If that man had not lived, we would have not known that that is not what occurred. He did not hit the tree. So who communicated that? We need to be confident when we call in that we're given the reason what has occurred. These are 2 dangerous situations. And I'm telling you, people didn't want to go out in their cars after the second one because it can be mild, sunny day, or it can be a little wind. And there are a lot of poles that we see around town that look bad. And I can't believe that you've checked 3,700 poles, and the many that we see that look really bad, they look like they're hollow inside, and they're black, and they're full of holes. I don't know how. And if you say that you've done it, does that mean you've checked the pole and say, well, it's only 30% compromised and we have to wait another 10 years? Or do you say this pole's going to last another year or 2, it's on the list, we'll replace it in a year or 2? Because if we have to wait another 10 years for some of these poles that we've seen, they're going to go down and they're going to hurt somebody. And
So
what is the process on that?
So Elaine, if I can, just a couple things. So first of all, I'll start with the storm event on that Saturday morning, March 4th. I'm not sure why the customer care person, they quoted the wrong information for you. So there was one event on Old Queen Anne Road, was not a pole-related event. There was no fallen, no broken pole. It was a piece of infrastructure at the top that was broken. Took out 1,400. That's a big priority, 1,400 customers. that's what you were calling about, but for whatever reason, the rep on the phone gave you the information for the other, which was called in, Coca Lab, I think it was 49 customers out. It was not a large number, but it was a broken pole and wires that a resident was involved in. It was obviously called in as a car versus pole. When we go, our first responders, their job is to make safe and then restore when we can and bring those customers back up. They don't change it in our system if you find out later there wasn't actually a car versus pole. The fact of the matter is that they did their job. So for whatever reason, it was a human error that she quoted the wrong information to you
Well,
over
it
the
wasn't
phone.
March 4th, it was March 3rd. The one on March 3rd was when Steve,
Steve is actually in the audience, actually. So
Yeah.
the first.
No, I think we're talking about the same one. Maybe we can argue over the date,
Yeah,
but we're
well-
talking about the same event. It was on Coco Cove Road. So
yeah, and it
that's,
knocked out 1,400 people.
yeah, in
And-
terms of, yeah, in terms of the snap poll that happened last year, that both Ellen and I came as a result, both in July and in August. I think you mentioned it on Old Queen Anne Road, did you not? I think you
Yeah, it's
mentioned
four
it.
corners.
So as a result of that, and I don't know if you're aware, but we had a hard look at those poles. It's a double circuit, there's heavy equipment at the top. Engineering went out there, and I believe the board 2 months ago approved 16 guy wires and anchors that will brace. So there's a lot of different support from the different utilities, but Eversource said, we need to take a closer look as a result of that. So if that gives you some peace of mind that there was follow-up to that particular incident, and I believe that was a poll hearing around a location, I was sitting in the audience here, I think 2 months ago. So I just wanted to answer that and give Ellen an opportunity to talk about the integrity of the
So,
polls.
and as far as the double poles are concerned, yeah, several of them, there are double poles that are being changed out there and transferring over because we said that they need to be, because we didn't find them to be safe anymore. But as we said, we have set up meetings, there was a process in place in order to clean those up. So we're doing that. We've also, for example, by the end of next week, there are 3 leaning poles that I have slated that have gone through engineering that are going to be replaced, one of them down on Main Street. We have some more that we're going to survey within 2 weeks to take a look at. So we are always out there looking at it, not just in Chatham, in all our municipalities, get that look. As far as the 3,977 polls that we did survey during the pandemic, we did. There were people that saw our folks out there just surveying polls. And also, I mean, I wouldn't have said it if it didn't happen, but that is where we are. We have a process. We have the correct folks from the town to be there. We're there, dedicated to be there in order to clean up these double poles.
Okay, but my only other question is, if a pole is, if you know it's not going to last another 10 years, I think you said this is your process, you take 18 months or whatever, go through. If it's not 100%, if it's like 30%.
If a pole is only 30%, that's a pole that's being replaced. If a pole only has 30%, we find out it has 30% integrity, we're replacing that pole.
Well, I'm saying if it's 30% not good.
That
Do we
may have
wait
been
10 years?
That may have
or-
been a poll that got a truss, and that's a poll that, will continue to get a look. Many of those that have trusses on them now, we've already decided, after taking a look at it, that it needs to be replaced, and it's a double pole.
Okay.
Not just from an accident, it's a double pole because it's set on our replacement schedule.
And what is the process for just private citizens when we see a pole that looks really bad, like the one on Old Queen Anne, that was 10 months, no service had to be, and it was there until today at 4 o'clock, it got removed.
Like
So
I said,
what do we
I'm
do?
happy
Who do
to
we
take
contact?
those.
Contact?
You can send me an email but make sure that you put where it is with a poll number on it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of hard sometimes, because
Well, yeah,
your
I do
poles are in really
understand that
dangerous
sometimes that
locations.
people,
but
and
I've tried.
I know kids like
But
to
I mean,
take
can
them
we- is
off
there
and,
someone, like,
Yeah, I think
we give it to DPW and they contact
Not
it?
necessarily, I mean, I've
It's a
said it
monthly meeting,
before,
Ellen.
you can, You can send it, yeah, we're gonna be meeting monthly, but I don't wanna inundate the Department of Public Works. I don't wanna
Honestly,
inundate Jill. You can
we could
email
go
it
through
to me.
staff. It could go through staff. We could have an area, general area of where this pole is and let someone who with, some safety protocol actually identify having citizens pulling off the side of the road trying to look for the pole number. We could get a reasonable process.
Yeah, I mean,
protocol together.
certainly, I'm not asking anyone to pull
Yeah.
over, but sometimes when someone says, I saw this pole on, for example, Old Queen Anne that's long and says, I saw this one on Old Queen Anne, I would need a little more to go off of, even if they say it's in front of house 30. I can usually find it.
All right. And before I invite Mr. Wardle up, I have Chief Tavano, I believe, wants to make a comment.
Good evening, Board. Just to Elaine's last comment, I just want to mention, folks call the fire department all the time for precarious-looking poles, wires that look precarious. We're happy to go out and assess. We're not subject matter experts. We're not engineers on poles. But our process is when we get a call for that, we go out, we assess it. If we agree that things look not right, our next call is to call the utility. And then they get dispatched out and they come check it. There've been times in the past where there's been poles that are either twisted, splintered, leaning, where we'll actually tape the area off to identify that it's been looked at. So multiple people don't continue to call, but also so people stay away from that area in case it is more of a hazard than what we're able to determine. From that point, we pass it on to the utility. They typically go out and look. There have been cases in the past where they've agreed that, yeah, this pole's an issue, and they've taken immediate action on it. But we're happy to go out. Elaine, if you want to pass that on, and just for your own knowledge, anytime you can call us and we can go out and evaluate it. Like I said, we're not subject matter experts on the integrity of the pole, but we can put a second set of eyes on it and pass that information on to the utility.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Chair, we've also added information to the website for any kind of pole integrity issue, even if there's a Verizon phone service, we have that information now on the website too. So residents don't have to call the fire department, they can contact Verizon directly, and Verizon is the first report.
All right, great, thank you. I'm going to invite Mr. Wardle up to the podium. He has firsthand knowledge of that incident or that early March day.
That I do. Thank you very much. I'll make this fast. I'm Steve Wardle. It's nice to see faces representing Eversource and Verizon here. I'm here to put a face on that guy story. I was that guy. All righty, well, my story starts March 3rd, 5 a.m. A microburst storm blew in from the northeast, raining sideways. Our alarm company called and woke us up, and I checked with the police, and I found that the storm had triggered many alarms downtown. Well, I'm obliged to check my alarm, whether it's explained or not. So I was out in the car and had to drive to town in the dark. The windshield wipers were on full blast. I don't do that very often. All righty. Our road has a street light at the top. Incidentally, I have some images. I don't know if you can bring those up. Yeah, thanks. The first image. Our road has a street light at the top and a street light at the bottom, but there's this hill that comes up, and this pole was right in that dark spot in between the trees. It's very dark in the middle. I started uphill, and suddenly there's this twisted phone cable that went over my roof rack, and it went, and of course it alarmed me. I hit the brakes. I came to stop right in front of that crosspiece, in between the two high-tension wires. All right, it was pitch black. This is 25 minutes later after the emergency vehicles have arrived. The wind had apparently broken this thing off at the ground and then halfway up, leaving the wires still attached, and sparks were flying when I was there. Very exciting. I was ready with my flashlight, and I sighted outside, and I determined that there were high voltage lines on either side of my car, looking at each side window. Those are the two at the top, usually with the big insulators, folks. The sparks were shooting around, and they were still connected, and had I rolled up onto that cross piece, I think it would have been lights out for me, as I see it. Realizing my predicament, I figured it was up to me to do something, and so what I came with is I put it in reverse. And I got out from underneath the wires with it. Happily, that all worked. I finally got to a point, I could see wires behind me still, but I was crammed up in the bushes at the side of the road. As luck would have it, I didn't die. I supplied this photo of the scene from my vantage point in the bushes. Eversource arrived. I had called 911, of course. The fire and police heroes are on the scene in minutes. Thanks, fellas. I called my wife so that she could join in the fun remotely. Let's see. I finally Eversource disconnected the power. A couple of wet firemen freed me from the danger, and I got out of there. That was it was about a half an hour later. Later on, the Eversource's website did indicate that the pole was down due to an auto accident, as Ms. Gibbs suggested. That kind of burned me a little bit. Was there an attempt to spin it? I don't know. Folks, that pole was blown over by a storm. It snapped like a twig. If a car was involved, it would have had to jump about 5 feet in the air, smash the pole, and then disappear without a trace. So it was not that way. The power was restored, and the road became passable about 1 o'clock that day, after a new pole was placed. Well, so many of our poles have a variety of ailments and seem to teeter in the wind with more wires and even bigger transformers that power our electric everything. More attention and timely repair to the old poles is required here and everywhere to safeguard citizens from calamity and to avoid what happened to me. Pole repair is a big expense to the utility companies, but it's part of their doing business. The second photo is another, if you can supply that second photo, sir. There we go. The second photo is another pole from my road, 5 or 6 woodpecker holes in it. You can see one of the twin poles on the other side. There's a little sort of cross beam that bolts them together. This picture I took about March 7th. I don't believe that it is fixed yet. All the wires still remain on the old pole. By my count, there were either 6 or 7 woodpecker holes. So those are fist-sized holes. You can, that's a nest hole. It's time to get these widowmakers fixed. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Wardle.
And that's it. Oh, any questions? This is an exciting story.
Yeah, we're very glad you're okay, and everyone has a face now for the name of that guy. All right, let's move on to some of the other bullet points, if you don't mind.
Sure. I feel as though we may have covered them, but you can tell me what. So the field progress to date and above, I think we've covered, and we've covered. We're going to continue to meet monthly with your staff. We have a process in place. It's a good process, and we'll tweak it if it needs improvement. Follow up on the recent outage events. I specifically was noting the wind event that this gentleman that we just met, not that guy, referenced, and I'm glad you're okay. In terms of capital projects, I have a whole list. I don't know that you want me to read it off to you. It is a significant amount. I can mention notable projects that we've done and that we're continuing to work on. So the pad-mounted transformer at Town Hall is a support and supply that augments the substation. So it's a I always call them a mini sub, but it's really transformers. So the transformers that are on a pole are existing within that cabinet. That's a reliability project. We also we tied 2 circuits that weren't tied together prior, which means you can switch people. You can bring up more people faster. It's all about reliability. Each location is different. Another project that's been done that Mike mentioned is throughout town, remote control switching, wire upgrades, voltage regulators. The voltage regulators can help control voltage also in the peak summer months. The almost 3,000-foot duct bank, even though it's in Harwich, it is related to that large reliability project and the new feed to Chatham. In the next year to 2 years, we have a new, it's about 1,100 feet on George Ryder Road, right here, that will allow us to bring a second supply to the police station. I'm not sure the chief even knew about this project, but now he hears it today for the first time. And the town facility that we're standing in right now. That's in the process of being permitted. It hasn't gone before you just yet. We'll also be installing switching devices and underground cable that's associated with that project right out here. Adjustments to Route 28, that's part of that larger project. So there's different pieces to that project that are going to take multiple years. We also have I'm trying not to get into the weeds here, Mike, with some of this. Yeah. The only other piece that I'm mentioning is some work that we did out on Morris Island as well. And we're going to most likely be going before you for some additional guys and anchors to support that infrastructure that's already on the poles on Morris Island.
All right, thank you. Before I bring it back to the board for any closing questions or comments, is there anyone online, I neglected to ask if there's any interest in comments or questions from the online audience? Nothing. All right, back to the board. Any closing questions or comments from the, Mike?
Yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing. I appreciate you came here tonight. You've given us a lot of information. You're well prepared. I don't want you to leave, however, without understanding that, and I think you heard it from the community, and you can hear it directly from me, some concern, some skepticism that you really are institutionally on top of the condition of every pole in Chatham. And I appreciate that you went around and did 3,900 polls, et cetera, et cetera. But we have eyewitness information here tonight, and I'm sure we can find others if we wanted to or needed to or did. And I want that to be communicated back into your organization. The reason I asked for a senior executive from your organizations is to make sure, I know you report back, but to make sure that there is an understanding at more senior levels in the company that this is a serious concern in this community. And while we appreciate what you're doing, we'd like you to be very, very sensitive to that.
Yeah, thank you, and we do understand your concerns, and we do take them seriously. And we will continue to work together with the folks, the staff from Chatham in order to resolve these issues and make sure we keep that moving forward.
Jeff?
I echo what Mr. Shell just said, and I just, every community is unique. And, Chatham's pretty unique because we are absolutely buffeted by winds here, both northeast and southwest winds, all the time. If it's not northeast, it's southwest. It's rare that we don't have a windy day here. So you have to understand that we are really unique in terms of those poles are, they're really hammered. So
They are, yes.
They are hammered here. So it's great to hear that we're on the radar, but we really need to feel the love. That's what we need. Okay? Thanks.
All right. Any additional comments from the board? Well, I want to thank you very much for coming. We appreciate the communication. We appreciate the meeting with staff and our DPW and other, community representatives. So we hope we can continue that conversation. We will work on finding, methods with working with the fire department or what have you, not to have the, other set of eyes looking at these polls and reporting, because I know, 39, almost 4,000 polls, it's a lot of polls to look at, and things deteriorate progressively over time. So, we're going to do our role too to keep that extra set of eyes and report back to you, because the process is not an overnight process, and the sooner we get it to you, the sooner it can be put into the queue. So I just want to keep communications open. Obviously, report back to the higher level staff that of each of your companies, and hopefully we can continue this dialogue and kind of work through some of these issues and, build up some more rapport with the public that we're addressing these in a timely manner. So I do thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our business agenda. Item 5, public comments on the business agenda. We have 5 items up. One's going to be, we have a one-day special alcohol permit for Monomoy Community Services, a Back to Summer Hangar Bee Party, and a Taste of Chatham. We have a item for a licensed to use town property, Wicked Wavy Swim School. We have an item for the Waterfront Infrastructure Bond Project Review and Prioritization. We have the Select Board Committee Liaison Assignments, and finally, we're going to have a committee reappointment interview procedure review. In light of the agenda, I will offer public comment now, but I will also allow public comment on item C, the waterfront infrastructure bond project review, if people would prefer to speak at that particular agenda item. So at the moment, I will open up the floor to any of the 5 items on our business agenda to public questions or comments. I see no one in the public. Do I see anyone online? Yes.
My name is Michael Barry. Are you accepting comments, anything other than what you just itemized?
Yes, the entire 5 items are up for right now. If you are,
I have something-
if you're only wanting to speak on the waterfront infrastructure, you can wait to that item, but the other ones are being offered right now.
No, this just concerns the matter of the Council on Aging.
That is not on the agenda tonight.
Can I speak to it at all?
No. It is not on, it's not on the agenda tonight.
So if I were to, I have to request an item on the agenda in order to,
That was actually earlier in our agenda. I will, if you have a very brief public
thank you.
agenda request, I will offer it.
I'll be
But
very
that
brief.
traditionally was earlier in our agenda, so.
I didn't
Yep.
understand that.
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
fine. I'm perfectly fine.
My name is Michael Barry. I'm president of the Friends of the Chatham Council on Aging. I just wanted to inform your board that the board, our board met this morning to discuss the election results and the fact that it was such a close vote, the fact that question 1 did pass at the town election, and we did form a resolution. I'd just like to read it to you. It's very brief. We passed a motion to make this resolution that the Friends of the Chatham Council on Aging continues to support a new COA facility at 1610 Main Street and requests the Select Board to schedule a special town meeting in September to put Articles 18 through 21 of the May 6th, 2023 town meeting warrant before the voters once again. The vote was 9-0 with 2 members absent. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention.
All right, thank you.
Thank
And like I mentioned in our public announcements agenda, which was item number 2, which is normally where we handle this type of issue, any type of special town meeting that refers to the 1610 property, as my conflict of interest still stands, I would be out of that process and I have to defer to my colleagues. But that is something that they can certainly make a request for, work with the town manager, and I would happily put it on an agenda moving forward at the request of any one of my colleagues, so.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just
Yes.
want to apologize to Mr. Barry. His hand was up briefly when you did announce the public comments, but he took it down.
Okay.
And I should have called his attention to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that being said, let's regroup. So we have our business agenda. Does anyone have any public questions or comments on anything on the list? Anyone from the public? No?
The person for Wicked Wavy Swim School is online when that agenda item comes up.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's do the one-day special alcohol permits. First is, let's see.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to
Yes.
recuse myself from this item.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davis. So consider requests related to Back to Summer Hangar B alcohol on town property, special day, one-day liquor permit, one-day entertainment permit, Monomoy Community Service. Does anyone from the, do we have a representative at all?
Teresa was on earlier. I'm not sure if I still see her.
I see
Oh,
Teresa.
Teresa?
Yeah, she's here.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well.
Are you going to do them separately? Because we're asking, we're doing both airport concert and Taste of Chatham.
We'll take
Would
them
you
one,
like me-
we'll take them one at a time.
Okay, airport hangar concert would be the 3rd time that we've held this event. We're looking to do a very similar project that we did last year. It is on the airport grounds. We have a police detail. We have additional porta potties, usually the fun things. Anybody who will be doing food vending will have a Board of Health permit with Town of Chatham. And it's really kind of a nice event. Sarah Swain and the Oh Boys, who were the headliners last year, have agreed to do it again this year. And we're really looking forward to it. We're trying to grow this into an event that really can appeal to pretty much everybody. It's a relatively low admission fee, and it's a real nice way to kick off the summer. So if you have any questions,
All right.
that's how we're doing it.
Thank you, Teresa. Questions or comments from the board?
None.
If not, there's a series of potential motions. Mr. Nacastro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say up front, I want to compliment Teresa for the way she put this together. This is one of the more detailed applications for licenses I've seen in 8 years on this board. So with that, there are 3 motions here. I'll move them in succession. I move to approve the request for alcohol to be served at Chatham Municipal Airport on Saturday, July 1, 2023, from 7 o'clock p.m. to 10 o'clock p.m.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Shell?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, I move to grant a special one-day liquor license to Teresa Malone as a representative of Monomoy Community Services for Saturday, July 1, 2023, from 7 o'clock p.m. to 10 o'clock p.m.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Shell?
Aye.
And I say aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to grant a one-day entertainment permit for outdoor live music to Teresa Malone as a representative of Monomoy Community Services for Saturday, July 1, 2023, from 7 o'clock p.m. to 10 o'clock p.m.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
And I say aye. All right. Now, Teresa, let's go with the Taste of Chatham event on July 31st, 2023.
Woohoo! This is our first return to the Taste of Chatham since before COVID. And we haven't come back prior to this, in large part because we knew the restaurants were rebuilding as well. They still are. And we know that staffing is still an issue, but when we did approach the restaurants, we had enough interest, albeit with some hesitation about staffing. We had a really nice response from the local restaurants that they would be willing to participate. So we're going to bring it back this year in a very different sort of format. We wanted someplace kind of magical, and Chase Park fits the bill. It is an early evening event, so we really don't think we'll be interfering with anything at any of the abutting properties. We have shrunk the size of the event from, we used to have in sometimes excess of 400 people there. This one will be limited to 200. We will have probably a small jazz quartet as we've had in the past. We have representation from we have Hog Island will be there, as well as Churro Vineyards, as far as relatively local beverage purveyors to go along with the food that will be served. We will have our own staff. We've contracted for quite possibly the nicest porta potty setup I've ever seen. So we're going to up our game in that category as well. We're really looking forward to it. It's a hard event to run because you do request so much of so many people in town, but the fact that they're pretty much on board with this is really wonderful for our organization. So tickets will be $200 a piece, which is pricey. We used to have we used to have 2 tiers of tickets in the past, but for this one we are going to concentrate, since it's a smaller event, on the higher price ticket for this one. I wish we could do it otherwise, but I don't think that we can ask restaurants in town in particular to be serving 400 people as they have in the past. So that was one of our concessions, to make it a little bit more appealing to the local restaurants and food distributors. So that's where we're at. If you have questions, this is our first time in Chase Park, and we did talk with Rec pretty extensive with the community or the recreation department. We're going to try and emulate how they do Festival of the Arts, the parking situation. We're not going to have any guests be able to park actually down at the that small parking lot in the back. We're going to do transportation systems that will skirt Main Street, because it'll also be Mondays on Main, the day that we're having the event. So we're going to set up at the Chatham Elementary School a parking area, probably some at the community center, and then come down past Oyster Pond and come into the event that way and drop people off right on Cross Street. So we're going to have 2 police details, one at the top of Shattuck and then one right in front on Cross Street. And hopefully that'll keep things moving along. We'll have different options for people. We may have a couple of things that they can purchase where they're, escorted right to the front door in a special ride. We don't know yet. But we're trying to that'll be new learning for us, because other than vans at Witches Walk, we're pretty much haven't had to deal with parking and transport issues before. So, you like to learn a little something new every time.
All right, thank you, Teresa. With that, any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Castro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Teresa, will you be shutting down Shattuck Place as they do when they have the Festival of the Arts? Traffic is barred except for neighbors.
Yes.
And have you reached out, or do you have plans to reach out to the neighbors who abut the park? Because I know we've had concerns in the past that have been expressed about how the park is used by neighbors.
If there is a vehicle to doing that, I didn't know if I should go, it's not a door-to-door kind of thing, is it? Can I get a list of voters, at least addresses, and send them a note? Or I don't know how they do it for festival. Probably don't do it anymore for Festival of the Arts, but.
Yeah, I don't think they do it for that, because that's something that's been there annually. There are a handful of homes around the park. Perhaps they could work with the town manager's office, could direct them still to how they might, I think it would be helpful to reach, otherwise, we might risk having some concerns or complaints afterward. I'd rather avoid that if at all possible, if people are given information about what this is about and what's going to be entailed.
Yeah, I think we can get a butters list for Teresa to send out notifications.
Yeah, or even a phone call might be helpful.
Okay.
So thank
Be
you.
happy.
Thank you, Teresa.
All right, hand up, no? Well, we have a series of potential motions, if anyone's so obligated. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request for alcohol to be served in Chase Park on Monday, July 31, 2023, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Second.
Second, okay. All those in favor? Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to grant a special one-day liquor license to Teresa Merlone as a representative of Monomoy Community Services for Monday, July 31, 2023, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
I say aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to grant a one-day entertainment permit for outdoor live music to Teresa Malone as a representative of Monomoy Community Services for Monday, July 31, 2023, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
And Chair says aye. All right, good luck, Teresa.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, moving right along. License to use town property for the Wicked Wavy Swim School. I believe we have the representative online, we have a representative in the audience, and we have Amy Howell also online for questions. All right, wonderful. Hi, guys.
Hi, how's it going?
We're well.
Good.
All right, if you just want to
Okay.
introduce yourself and give us a little background here.
Yeah, I'm Sam Barnard. I'm Brooke Linnell. And we started Wicked Wavy Swim School last year to basically after COVID started, the swim lessons for the town of Chatham, which we both used to do, stopped completely. So we just started our own swim lesson company. And last summer, we also had to get permission to use town property, which was Oyster Pond, to do our swim lessons. And instead of paying the 10% of what we made throughout the summer, we created like a little deal with the Parks and Rec Department to donate swim lessons for families that would not otherwise be able to afford it. And we're basically here to do the same thing and request use for Oyster Pond on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And Wednesdays from 1 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. to do swim lessons for the Monomoy program with Teresa, actually.
we've been in contact with Teresa to go through like how we could go with donating our swim lessons, and she has kind of helped us put together a program to give lessons to kids that are in the Monomoy program. So that is what would be happening from like 5 to 6 on Wednesdays. So our lessons, our main lessons will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 to 4, and then this like extra group of lessons that will be donated, swim lessons, will be from 5 to 6 on Wednesdays.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know Amy Howell is also online if we have any questions, or if the board has any questions. I know they've been before Park and Rec and vetted this through them recently. So with that, questions or comments from the board? Mr. Nacastro.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think this is a very positive development for the town, and I certainly have no objections to it happening. I think it'd be a good thing for the town. But I did look at the agreement that was drafted by, I guess, Town Council, and maybe Town Council will watch the video of this, because there are a couple of places where I wanted to bring some concerns I had to his attention. And we also received late today from you, Jill, communication from Town Council relative to some potential change to the agreement. I think it has to do with the involvement of Monomoy Community Services. So I don't know, I assume this is sort of a fluid document at the moment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, so we received an updated request for the Select Board to incorporate into the license that has a partnership with Monomoy Community Services, but also additional hours. So if you don't mind, the information was provided to Town Council to review, and he suggested, because it's somewhat of a fluid process, or maybe just late afternoon breaking news, that the Select Board, if you're inclined to approve it, you can approve the swim lessons as a licensed use of the property and vote to do so in principle, subject to the parties working out a mutually acceptable license agreement. So his concern is, who do we need to require the insurance from, who's named in the license, and exactly how much compensation or of a license fee would be paid to the town.
Yes, I saw that, and I'm inclined to offer or support a motion to that effect, but let me just go through a handful of places in the agreement where I'd like Town Council to take a look. First, in paragraph 5, which is referred to, entitled alteration of the premises, the very last word, the word inspection, it refers to an inspection, but there's no place elsewhere that I found in the agreement where an inspection is called for. So he might want to define that. There is a provision elsewhere where it does allow for the town to go in, but there's nothing, the word inspection is not used. Secondly, in paragraph 8, under indemnification, in the second line, where we indemnify the licensor, that's the town. I think we should specifically insert the Select Board and the Parks and Recreation Commission by name as indemnities. And I would make the same addition under insurance, the insurance paragraph number 9 on the top of page 4, where the additional insured, where it specifies that the liability insurance policies cover and indemnify the licensee and the licensor. Their officers, I would insert the Select Board and the Parks and Recreation Commission by name. And then I took a look at the insurance endorsements, and I just wanted to make sure that Town Council has seen those. I don't know if he has at this point. Has he seen the endorsements from the insurance?
I have to defer to Amy on that, if she provided it to him.
Yeah, okay, so there's a certificate of insurance that's attached, and it lists the various categories of insurance. This is the A-Cord certificate, it's pretty standard. I just want to make sure that what is recited there conforms to paragraph 9 of the license agreement. I'm not sure that there's a direct correspondence, but it may be satisfactory. He just needs to look at that. And finally, on the endorsements, there are several, but there's one in particular I want to bring to his attention, and this is the endorsement that is numbered Commercial General Liability CG 20-01-1219. There's a paragraph 2 which says that this is addressed to the insured party, which would be the contractor. You have agreed in writing in a contractor agreement that this insurance would be primary and would not seek contribution from any other insurance available to the additional insured. That's us. I didn't see that language in the agreement, so would just ask town council to take a look at that and make sure the agreement is consistent with that endorsement, or vice
Dean, would
versa.
you mind providing me your notes, or if
I'll give you this after.
that would be perfect? Great, thank you.
Thank you. And thanks very much. I only bring these up for, make sure everybody's protected, but I'm very sympathetic to what you want to do.
Mike, question?
Not a question. I just wanted to comment. I did read the agreement. Just for the record, I thought it was a good program. I thought the agreement laid out a reasonable structure for what it sounds like you're going to do. I understand you're going to amend it somewhat to incorporate a relationship with Monomoy Community Services. I won't make any legal comments. I think Dean's covered everything. I'll simply say I would like it to indicate, I would like the enterprise, when it is up and running on the beach there at Oyster Pond, to indicate that it is not an activity that's being provided by the town.
Ms. Davis?
Just a question for Wicked Wavy, and very supportive of this. And it goes in sort of what Mike is saying. Are you going to have signage up at the pond at all? And what kind are they?
We do have signage available to us. We have a big banner that says Wicked Wavy Swim School that we would be happy to put up during the lessons.
Okay, so, but I agree with Mike that it needs to identify that this isn't a town activity.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay, additional questions or comments, Mr. Dykens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dean, you had a motion earlier. Would you like to profit that or
Yeah,
offer that?
sure. I was going to pull it from Pat Costello's.
Please,
thing.
yeah.
So I move that the select board approve the proposal as presented by Wicked Wavy Swim School. That we approve this in principle, subject to the parties, including the town, working out a mutually acceptable license agreement on the advice of town council. I'll add that in.
Yeah, I second that, and I wish you well. I look forward to seeing swimming lessons down there. Was it fun last year? You did it last year too, right? It was
Yeah.
successful? You had a blast?
It was awesome.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
very excited to do it again, and
Good.
thank you guys for
Yeah.
listening to our
Yeah,
proposal.
and thank you.
Not yet, not yet.
Well,
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any additional questions or comments?
No.
All right. Select Board Member DeCastro?
Aye.
Select Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Select Board Member Dykens?
I guess so, yes. Aye.
Select Board Member Shell?
Enthusiastically, aye.
Yes, I think it's a rite of passage getting swim lessons over in Oyster Pond.
Yeah, it
so.
sure is.
right, good
Agreed.
luck.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
guys very much.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Next item on our agenda is the Waterfront Infrastructure Bond Project Review and Prioritization. This item was brought forth from request from both Select Board Member Dykens and Davis back on 10/25/2022. We have Bob Duncanson online to kind of kick this off. And as I mentioned earlier, after the board has their time for make questions and comments, I will open this up to the public for any of their questions or comments if they have any. So, Dr. Duncanson.
Good evening, members of the board, members of the public. So just a quick run through of the memo that you received as part of your packet. We were asked to provide an update on waterfront projects as well as the status of the waterfront bond that was approved by town meeting back in 2017. So we included as part of this the original projects that were listed that compromised that 11.3 million. And a number of those projects have either been completed or are in process currently. Probably the two most significant ones were the Fish Pier observation deck that was finished a couple of years ago, as well as the trap dock pier that was also completed a couple of years ago. And then since that time, we have moved on to the next set of projects. So we currently have underway the South Jog bulkhead replacement project. And I included a picture in your packet that showed it as of the end of last week. And I'm happy to report that over the weekend, they finished the installation of all the fender piles along the South Jog and along the west face of the South Jog. And when I was down there yesterday, they were in the process of cutting those fender piles off to the appropriate height, as well as, and then removing the rest of those. And I can share the photo that was included as part of your packet if you'd like to do so. And in addition to that, as you can see in the photo, the entire form had been prepared for the concrete pad that is immediately west of the South Jog bulkhead, extending into the parking area. And so that was scheduled to be poured either today or tomorrow. However, that has been put off until later this week while they finish up making sure that all the fender piles and whatnot are properly attached to the cap area. So that will take place later this week. The goal is to try to get the South Jog western area back open to the fishing community as quickly as possible. We were originally targeting the end of this week. It's probably going to bleed over until the early beginning of next week. Because if you were down there at all the end of last week or the first couple days this week, there has been a lot going on construction-wise. In addition, a lot of the lobstermen, the state reopened the lobster shelf, the lobster areas east of Chatham last week, or actually the end of the week before that. And so a lot of the lobstermen had been working to get their pots out in the water. They've been successfully doing so using the North Jog, and our staff has been down there coordinating that to make sure that the fishermen get access to that North Jog, can load their boats with the lobster pots and then get those placed out in the waters that they would like to do. In addition to the South Jog bulkhead work, the contractor is also working on the rebuild of the stairs around the Wharfinger building that provide access from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot, as well as the bathrooms in the Wharfinger building. That work is also moving along well. And again, we are targeting to get that work all completed before the Memorial Day weekend so that access to the bathrooms and between the upper and lower parking lots, and therefore the observation deck, will be open to the public. And then the third component of this project is installation of a sidewalk along Chatham Bars Avenue from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot area, because one of the things that has been a problem for a number of years is folks with strollers or with accessibility issues are not able to use the stairs that go between the upper and lower parking lot along the Wharfinger building, and so they walk along the road where we have fairly constant and heavy truck traffic, in and out of the fish pier, because remember, it is a commercial fish offloading facility, and it just also happens to be that this site is basically the number 1 or number 2 tourist spot in Chatham as well. And so we've taken the opportunity to put a sidewalk along that Chatham Bars Avenue extension to get people out of the road. So there will be a 5-foot sidewalk, a guardrail, and then we're able to shift the road approximately 2 feet to the east to improve some of the sight distances as well as the width of the roadway itself. We're going to increase each travel lane by about a foot, which when you're dealing with tractor trailers towing, 53-foot containers, that will make a big difference in the safety of that area. In order to do that, we are getting an easement from the private property owner just to the east of that road area. Originally, we were going to put a retaining wall up there. However, when the contractor took a more detailed look at it, they came up with an alternative that will reduce the footprint and frankly make it look more in keeping with the area by installing a rock revetment. Not rocks of the size that we see along the shoreline, smaller size rocks that will be used to stabilize that slope. And that work began on Monday, and I expect probably tomorrow or by Thursday, they will be completed pretty much with getting that area, with getting the revetment in along that area. And then subsequent to that will be the work on the road itself. We have to do a little bit of drainage work, relocate a couple of catch basins so that they work more efficiently, picking up all the stormwater that comes down that area. And we just, so you know, we've eliminated quite a bit of the stormwater that used to run down Barcliff Ave extension from Barcliff Ave as well as Shore Road. As part of the work we were doing over on Crow Road, we installed drainage in the upper parking lot as well as drainage on Shore Road. So we've significantly cut down the amount of runoff that goes down Chatham Bars Ave extension and ultimately into Chatham Harbor. So, it's been a very busy area for the last couple of months because we had the Fish Pier bulkhead contractor working. We had the company that was doing the drainage work working. And then last week and this week, we've had Lawrence Lynch in there working on the reconstruction and repaving of Shore Road. So I was down there Monday afternoon, and there was barely an inch of area that wasn't either under construction or construction vehicles parked and whatnot. And then in addition to that, the fish market located at the pier is also doing renovations. And so we had a large tractor trailer parked out on Shore Road that was offloading some equipment for part of that project. So it's been a very busy location recently, but we are on schedule to get everything either buttoned up before the Memorial Day weekend, or there will be some work still going on into early June. So that is a update on the Fish Pier project, and as indicated in the memo, we were taking approximately $3.6 million out of the waterfront bond. We supplemented that with $1 million grant from the Seaport Economic Council for that. And then we have funding for the owner's representative and the engineer that was also coming out of the waterfront bond. The other major project that we currently have underway right now is down at the new trap dock right next to the harbor master's office, where the new shed is currently under construction. And again, I included a photo of that was taken at the end of last week in the memo, and I'm happy to report that when I was down there today, all the roof trusses or all the roof is now up and was in the process of getting ready to be plywooded and then shingled. So that project is also, again, moving along relatively quickly in anticipation of getting that open and available for fishermen by early June. And just remember, this is an open-ended building, somewhat similar to what was down there previously, and it's just intended to provide a space out of the weather. So whether it's the heat of summer or rainstorm, to protect seafood product once it's offloaded from the vessels, and until it can be transferred to waiting trucks. We will be installing an ice machine, and I've indicated to the board previously that the town was the recipient of an ice machine from the Gulf of Maine Institute that received a grant from the federal government to help communities update fisheries offloading facilities. We originally looked at the potential for upgrading some of the ice capabilities at the Fish Pier. That really wasn't going to work as well. We had the trap dock project in the queue, and so we were able to work with the Gulf of Maine Institute to transfer funding from the Fish Pier project over to this project. The ice machine has been received. It is currently in storage, and as soon as the contractor gets the mezzanine level constructed, the ice machine components will be put up in that mezzanine level, because, you know, one of the issues is we have at this location, as in other coastal locations, we are in the floodplain, so we had to make sure that the ice machine compressor and other component were above the floodplain. And so we do have a small mezzanine going in at the gable end, the landward gable end, that will house that ice machine and keep it up out of any potential future flooding. And as I indicated, we do have, I indicated the funding sources for that project as well. We, unfortunately, while we did get Seaport Economic Council funding for the engineering work for this project, we did not receive a Seaport Economic Council grant for that project. So it was unfortunate that, you know, we weren't able to take advantage of that and get $1 million for this project. But this project is not $1 million anyway. The building is roughly about a $500,000 project in total between the contract for the construction with Eastward Companies, and then again, we have owner's rep services, and we have the engineering oversight. And so we're going to be putting together a request later this week to seek $500,000 out of the waterway user fee account, which currently has about a little over $2 million available in that account. And so rather than, we originally funded this project out of the waterfront bond, but we want to go ahead and transfer the costs associated with the building to the WOOF and husband our money that remains in the waterfront bond for some of the larger projects. Because by vote of town meeting, we were only able to use $500,000 out of the WOOF in this current fiscal year. Town meeting back on May 6th did increase the amount of the waterfront bond money that we can use in FY24 up to $1 million, recognizing how much money we had in the fund, as well as the larger projects that we still have in the queue. The next project that I just wanted to update the board on quickly is the 90 Bridge Street project, which, as you know, is going to house a couple of things. It's going to house a new upweller facility in the former Stage Harbor Coast Guard boathouse that is currently in storage up in Quincy, held by a private party. And the board has previously accepted donation of that boathouse back to Chatham, and we will locate it at 90 Bridge Street on a pile-supported pier to house the new town shellfish upweller. In addition to that, there will be a number of floats and all around that building, some of which will be handicapped accessible. It'll be the first time in Chatham that we have a handicapped accessible ramp down to public floats because we have the luxury of enough space here to be able to do that. We will also be enlarging the existing timber pier that's there, that's used for fisheries offloading, and we will be adding a float to that as well to make offloading some of the smaller volumes of fisheries and shell fishery project more easy, as well as, again, providing access for the recreational boater. And in addition to that, there will be also a new building built on the landward side of that property, which will house public restrooms as well as a small storage space for the shellfish department. And again, we had to go to the state to get permission for those buildings because we are in the floodplain, and obviously we didn't want bathrooms, 13 feet up in the air, if you will. So we did, while the original building permit was denied by the Chatham building inspector, which is required when you're building in the floodplain and you're not making the building totally compliant. He denied that. We then appealed it to the State Building Code Appeals Board, with the full knowledge and support of the building commissioner. And the State Building Code Appeals Board did vote favorably on both the Upweller building, which obviously is also not up in the air, if you will. It is going to be designed with flood vents and things like that, so we did everything we could. And they also approved the bathroom storage facility, which again will be all wet-proofed, and utilities will be up in the attic out of the floodplain. So we crossed all the Ts and dotted all the Is on that one. We do have some outstanding permits that are currently in the queue, if you will, for that. One of the most significant being the Army Corps of Engineer permit. That one has been, I think, somewhat frustrating for staff. We are currently on our 4th reviewer at the Army Corps because of staff shortages in their review section in the New England region. Just to give you an example, one of the reviewers that we dealt with was on loan to the New England region from San Diego. But, you know, every time we get a new reviewer signed, it's a learning process for them. So I hate to say we have to start over from scratch, but we have to start over. Maybe not from scratch, provided that, you know, one reviewer passes information along to the other. It has unfortunately drawn the process out. We also have some DEP permits outstanding, mainly because they won't issue their permits until the Army Corps issues theirs. And tomorrow we have a meeting with the HVDC, and we have an upcoming hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals later this month. So all those permits are in process, and we're hopeful over the next couple of months we will get those resolved, with the goal of getting this project out to bid this summer, getting a contractor lined up for construction to start, you know, mid to late fall, with the water side projects first, new bulkhead, getting the timber pier extended, and then building the pile supported pier for the Upweller building, so that then we could look at getting the Coast Guard building sent back to Chatham. The private entity that owns it did receive $250,000 last year from the CPA to pay for the cost of getting that building transported back to Chatham. We submitted, meaning the town submitted, a $750,000 request this year to the CPA. That was cut to $350,000, just because, you know, they felt and we acknowledged we couldn't spend $750,000 in the time frame that they wanted to. So they wanted to split it over 2 fiscal years. So we'll be going back to the CPA next year for additional funding for exterior renovations. And in the meantime, we continue to look for funding sources to fund some of the interior renovations, you know, the upweller, the new tanks, the pump and all, for that as well. We also submitted just recently a $1 million construction grant to the Seaport Economic Council for the waterside improvements, the bulkhead, the pier, and the pier that support the upweller facility, as well as the floats and the ADA gangway. There will have to be some additional funding sought, probably not from Seaport Economic Council necessarily, to fund some of the upland improvements, the restrooms and the storage building, and ADA accessible walkways, as well as expanded parking on the site. And then the final project, I just wanted to give you a quick update, is on the Riders Cove Landing. That project has been in process for a couple of years. Quite honestly, we kind of put that process on hold a little bit while we concentrated on the work at the Fish Pier, 90 Bridge Street, and the trap dock. We've met with the engineers. You know, that has a new bulkhead along the landing, as well as doing some work with the existing ramp to make it more usable, realigning it, maybe making it a little wider, as well as putting some floats along the side of the ramp to make it easier for people launching and retrieving boats, to have some space, as well as providing some dinghy storage, which, if you're familiar with that landing, right now takes place on the beach in front of the MCI property. And, you know, we all know that sometimes having skiffs and all stored on the beach is not the best thing for the, you know, the environment. for eelgrass and whatnot. So we're providing some more dinghy floats as well. And then some of the pending projects that we have, and some of these are continuation of some of these existing projects. We've proposed a cantilevered walkway along the south jog. As part of the current project, we are providing a walkway around the west side of the lower parking lot, because one of the issues we have is people trying to go from the end of the stairs at the Werfinger building when they get down to the lower level parking lot, and then they're heading for the south jog to, meet up with one of the SEAL Tour boats or a private entity. They walk through the parking lot where we have, commercial trucks and tractor trailers. So we're adding a pedestrian walkway around the perimeter of that lower lot to keep people out of the lower lot itself. And one of the things we were doing was putting this cantilevered walkway on the south jog. However, that required a separate permitting effort. And so to not hold up the current project, we pulled that out, and we will be doing that as a separate project. But that will complete the pedestrian safety improvements. As I mentioned, Riders Cove Landing, we want to get going back on that project. It's not as critical. The bulkhead there is nowhere near as big and tall, and dredging is not as deep. So that, while that bulkhead needs to be replaced, it was not at the crisis state that the bulkhead at the fish pier was, where we had failure of that a couple of years ago. We had an excavator fall through the south jog, and then we had identified some voids underneath those areas because of material leaking out through the 40-plus-year-old south jog bulkhead. There has also been some discussion about extending the south jog further seaward to provide more docking space for fisheries vessels. That will be an interesting, complicated permitting process, just in and of itself, because it's extending out in state tidelands, but it's further complicated by the fact that there is a federal navigation channel that would have to be changed, and to do that would require congressional action. So there needs to be not a lot, but there needs to be some more discussion among the various stakeholders as to whether or not that project will move forward. I hate to put it this way, but, we're all cognizant, I think, of the changes in the fisheries industry overall. And so whether or not, that extension will be absolutely necessary or will be a good use of town funds clearly needs further discussion. And then there's several other projects that were originally listed in the 2017 bond, including the Mill Pond Pier replacement. Again, not a project in immediate dire need. We've had some discussions at the staff level about it. We did reach out to a couple of companies that deal with, installation of piers. And so we have some better idea of what that cost may be for that. It's going to be more than was originally anticipated or programmed in 2017. But, not maybe as bad as we might think given some of the costs. We're talking for that project in the $200,000 to $300,000 range, where in 2017, which was really 2016 estimates, was only $75,000. There's also been some talk about a walkway at the Barn Hill ramp, because right now when you're launching boats in the ramp, there's a series of rocks right along the side of the ramp. And so, if you're putting your boat in the water or trying to get it out, you have to kind of scramble over those rocks while holding lines and whatnot as you get the boat on the trailer. So there's been some discussion about doing that, either a walkway up on the rocks or potentially floats along the side of the ramp itself. So that work clearly needs some more discussion and, some level of engineering and therefore permitting. So there's going to be more discussion about that. And then the other big project that was on the 2017 list was doing something about the Crow's Pond ramp. However, there's been discussions kind of on and off over the years. That ramp is what it is. It's more driven by the topography in the area, the bathymetry in the area. The upper portion of that, the parking lot area is not paved. It's all well within wetland jurisdiction. And so we're just not, we're not absolutely convinced that much more could be done to that ramp to make it better than it is today. We do have the ramp at Riders Cove Town Landing, which is really the big major ramp in the area. So the exact status of what may happen over the long term for the Crow's Pond ramp still needs to be discussed. In terms of where we are with the funding, as I mentioned earlier, as of May 1st, we had a balance of $2,148,000 in the WOOF. The WOOF was created in 2017 specifically to fund capital expenses for waterfront projects. So we have that funding available, and it's a combination of multiple sources. As I said, we're going to be putting together a memo here towards the end of this week seeking $500,000 from the WOOF to fund the Trap Dock Shelter project. Honestly, I was hoping that that project would have been further along and we'd have a better sense of exactly what the costs were. But I think at this point, we're probably going to be north of 500,000, but we can only seek 500,000 in this current fiscal year from the WOOF by vote of town meeting. And as I said, starting next year, that has been increased to $1 million. Community Preservation Act funding is also a source that we'll be further tapping into. In some conversations with the finance director, it looks like the Little Mill Pond pier replacement, the Barn Hill Landing walkway, as well as portions of 90 Bridge Street would be likely candidates for the recreation category of the CPA, and we will be making those applications as those projects move forward. And as I said, we're going to continue to seek funding from the Seaport Economic Council. We've been very successful in getting grants from them, in the $400,000 range for engineering, and as well as several $1 million grants for Old Mill Boatyard several years ago, for the Fish Pier bulkhead work, and as I said, we just submitted a $1 million grant for 90 Bridge Street. And we will continue to look at other funding sources, primarily in federal. There's ARPA funds, as well as other specific funds in NOAA for fisheries and all that could provide grant opportunities for us to tap into. And then, as I said, the 2017 appropriation for the waterfront bond was $11,355,000. To date, we've expended a little over $6 million out of that project for things like, the Fish Pier bulkhead, the trap dock, as well as the Fish Pier observation deck. We currently have $1,490,000 encumbered out of the waterfront bond to complete the Fish Pier bulkhead and the trap dock building, both their construction as well as owners' representatives. So when you put those numbers together, we've either expended or encumbered about 66% of the waterfront bond, meaning we have about $3.8 million remaining in there. The biggest project we have kind of in the queue, if you will, is 90 Bridge Street. We have an estimate of around $5 million for that is one, which is the waterfront, the waterside improvements, if you will. So between what remains in the waterfront bond, what we currently have in the waterway user fee account, as well as hopefully receiving the $1 million grant from the Seaport Economic Council, we have enough money to get that underway as soon as we complete permitting. And then, we would look at further things like some of the other projects, Trap Dock, not Trap Dock, but Riders Cove Landing, potentially tapping into, again, the waterway user fee, which is there's continuing about $300,000 coming into that account every year, as well as, again, seeking Seaport Economic Council grants. So with that, I know I've spoken way too long, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, after that thorough review, I'm going to kick it off to Select Board Member Dykens and Davis, who kind of, put this request out for some general comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Bob, once again, a complete and exhaustive review of where we are with respect to our current projects and our future projects. I appreciate the amount of work that's been done down at the Fish Pier, and that area has been hopping of late, and along with Shore Road, et cetera. But right now, I'm going to just try to summarize the numbers a little bit and understanding kind of where we've been, what we've spent, and what we'd like to accomplish going forward. This is from your notes, and you just ended with this summary, but about $6 million has been spent on the trap dock, and another 1.5. I'm rounding 1,490 up to 1.5, so call it $7.5 million has been either expended in or encumbered for the trap dock and also the Stage Harbor, the Eldridge Pier over there, along with the shed there. So there's 7.5 out of the 11.3, leaving us about.
Well, just that also includes the Fish Pier. So that includes the Fish Pier.
Yeah,
the observation, the bulkhead work, and trap dock.
Everything.
Yeah, all three of those.
Oh, yeah, all in, yep, to date, so, which is great. But I am concerned about the funding going forward, and I'm especially concerned about 90 Bridge Street and how we're gonna, I think we have thus far an estimate of 5.6, I've seen both numbers, and so if we have 3.8 remaining, and we have a nut for 5.6, we're gonna rely on what I thought I heard you say, perhaps $1 million from the Seaport grants. So that would give us 4.8 out of the 5.6, and then we need to tap into some other source, waterway users fund or some other source, CPA funds, for another $800,000 or so. But I'm of the opinion that, and this is an unstudied opinion, Dr. Bob, but it's going to be more expensive than we think. These things always are. And I'm a little concerned about project creep as well. I thought we talked about not having ability to offload there with an array of floating docks, et cetera. I thought we kind of nailed that down with the investment at the Eldridge Pier. I was confused by your comment. So I'd like, if you might, some clarity there. And then I don't want to lose sight of needs for Riders Cove in particular. Because then and I'm concerned about how we prioritize the remaining projects that we have that we were initially thinking about funding via the 11.3, the bonding in 2017. Riders Cove has become another offloading area big time for mussels, for fish, for tuna fish, for lobsters, for also shellfish. So really is a very active landing, and I mean real active. Boats stack up waiting to load and offload, and also to get trailered and to get launched and retrailered, et cetera. So anyway, I don't want to lose sight of Riders Cove because I do think it's the next real, in my opinion, the next high priority area. I like what you said about looking for CPA funds and looking perhaps for the recreational side of CPA for the rest of our town landings, because as you've heard us say repeatedly here, that preserving access to town landings is a major priority. And I do think it falls under the rubric of recreation, if you will. So those are my points. I am concerned about 90 Bridge. I'm concerned about creep there. I'm concerned about its cost and where we're going to get funding. And kudos on the trap dock and on Eldridge Pier, et cetera. A lot of work has been done. I get it. But this stuff tends to, be more expensive than we ever thought, and we kind of run out of money. So I am concerned about money. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for your update. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to touch base on a couple of your comments. We have not forgotten about Riders Cove. The design there is probably 90% complete. The next step will be entering the permitting phase. Because it's an existing pier or an existing bulkhead that we're just going to reface. We're going to reface it with FRP, not steel. Just like we did at Old Mill Boatyard, and whatnot. So, I don't think that one is going to be a significant permitting effort, but keep in mind, we are within the Pleasant Bay ACEC. So that, that does bring more scrutiny to these projects. So yeah, we haven't forgotten about Riders Cove, and that is probably, the next one in the queue, if you will. Right now we have Trap Dock is pretty well complete once the building is up. Fish Pier will be pretty much complete. There's still some things to be done, over the Fish Pier, more on shore side, electrical upgrades and things like that, that came out of the 2016 assessment. Assuming that we get the permits for 90 Bridge Street like we're anticipating and can get that project out to bid, I fully agree with you. Until we go to bid, the numbers are all just numbers. But we've tried to inflate the latest estimate that we got with the engineers to include in our Seaport grant, and that's where the 5 million, plus came from for the water side improvements. We've tried to take that into account based on what we're seeing for current bid prices and what kind of escalators we put on those projects. So, as I said, we have about 3.8 million left in the bond. Assuming that we get the $1 million grant for construction at 90 Bridge Street, that'll bring that down somewhere in the mid fours, if you will. And then, we will have, assuming we take the 500,000 out of the WOOF, we will have about $1.5 million in the WOOF. And as I said, that is a recurring funding source of about $300,000 a year into that account. So, we should be in pretty good shape to undertake that project. And then, assuming for Riders Cove that we can seek $1 million grant for the construction of that from the Seaport Economic Council, and I think we can, because clearly you hit the nail on the head. That landing is used extensively for commercial fishing, shell fishing, and that's the kind of thing that the Seaport Economic Council supports. So I think we can, depending on the cost of that project, we should be able to fund that one pretty well between the WOOF and Seaport money. And then for some of these, quote, smaller projects, like rebuilding the pier at Mill Pond and some of the others, and, as I said, some of the components of 90 Bridge Street and Barn Hill Landing, that can come out of the CPA, because absolutely, they are recreational facilities and used by recreational boaters quite a bit. So that kind of rehashes where we are on the funding side. So at this point, we, meaning the staff, we are not ready yet to propose another waterfront bond at this point. You may see one come together, this summer and fall for next year's town meeting. But right now, we're just kind of trying to sort through everything and get some of these bigger projects finished. And, hopefully get the Seaport grant, hopefully get 90 Bridge Street put out to bid, so we have some actual numbers.
Thank you, Bob.
Shereen?
Thanks, Jeff, for laying that all out. And thanks, Bob, for the report. It's really good to see everything laid out the way you did. I get a better idea of everything. I'm not going to reiterate what Jeff had said about all the money and the numbers. I do have faith in you and your staff to be able to put together some good grants. You've done it in the past, and, there are opportunities, as you said, with Seaport, ARPA, NOAA, and USDA, I think, could be really creative when it comes to the upweller. I think USDA could be a really good resource for stuff like that.
Yep.
But one of the things that I was flagged, a couple of things here that, I agree with Jeff on the project creep as far as the offload facility side of 90 Bridge Street. I think the priority should be for the upweller. And I think with, the trap dock being the primary offloading facility for Stage Harbor, I don't see the necessity for this. I know there are some tuna guys that offload over there, and, you know, most people have the hoists out in the back of the truck. I wouldn't want to see us just having another place that's not necessary. The other one that was interesting to me was the South Jog extension. Where did that concept come from? I mean, where was it born out of? Waterways, or was it staff, or what?
That actually came out of conversations a couple of years ago with Aunt Lydia's Cove Committee.
It did, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's way too complicated of a project to think about with the federal aspect of everything. And, you know,
Right.
Congress is just not the Congress that it used to be years ago. So passing any kind of legislation to change that navigational federal channel would be a real challenge, especially since we fought so hard to get it to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we pulled it out of the current project, because we knew if it was going to happen, it was going to take a long time to come to fruition, and we couldn't hold up the bulkhead replacement.
Great. And I agree with Jeff that Riders Cove should be a priority. Obviously, you know, the launch boat over there is a little challenging and whatnot. And, you know, it is one of those places that, just like Old Mill Boatyard, just in the summertime is absolutely nuts.
Yep.
But if we can have a strong infrastructure there, it's helpful for public safety and ease of access. So that's all good. So thank you. That's all I have. I appreciate it.
Okay. Additional questions or comments from the board? Is there anyone from the public who has any questions or comments? Anyone on the viewing audience online? Nope. All right. Well, that was a very thorough discussion. So, Dr. Bob, thank you very much, and we will keep tabs on
Thank you.
progress. All right. Now for the real fun stuff. Select Board Committee Liaison assignments. In our packet, there was a sheet breaking down our current assignments. I know by default, or however you want to phrase it, there'll be some movement around. So let's basically open it up to the committee or the board for any thoughts on their assignments. I believe I'm taking over the Summer Residence Committee.
Yes.
So, yep.
Yes.
So Jeff, you're excused from that. I will take over Summer Residence.
Anything you want to horse trade? Anything you want to give up?
I mean, there's a couple I'd be willing to, you know, open up if there's someone else interested in it.
Well, I'll leap, I don't know if it's a tradition that the chair is on the OPEB trustee committee, but if that were the case, I would trade you that for the Economic Development Committee.
I believe the chair does become a member of the OPEB. Economic Development Committee has not met in a couple of years. I would be happy to give another representative an opportunity to serve with them. So, yes, I would take that offer, yes.
Okay, done.
I'm fine with my committees.
No, I like my committees, I do. You know, I mean, very blunt, a lot of the advisory committees I get to attend quite often. You know, I'm going to be very upfront, you know, Conservation Commission, I've only attended a handful of meetings, but our regulatory committees really don't need us, you know, sitting in the audience on every meeting. They function very well on their own, and they certainly know how to get a hold of us when they have a question or concern. So I've learned that very thoroughly over the years, so.
Yeah, I do want to say something, because a lot of people ask why I'm not on any of the, you know, waterways-related committees, and I do want just to let folks know is because I'm actively involved in those, in the waterways and in the commercial fishing aspect of the town. You know, so I traded out Outlet East Cove to Corey a couple of years ago. You know, and as much, it frustrates me very much because I think I would love to be on any of them, but it's not something I can be at this time.
I'm okay with my committees.
Okay, so I mean, pretty much relatively broken, balanced out. If we're good, we're good.
Mr. Chair, just a question. So where did the Economic Development Advisory Committee?
Mike Shell will now be
Shell.
taking over that.
Right, thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Jill, do we know the date of, Mr. Chairman, through you, do we know the date of the summer town meeting? Has that been established yet?
Not yet. The chair actually just stopped by our office, so I think they'll have that announced pretty soon.
Who is the chair? Is it still Jamie?
Jamie, yes.
Okay, so we're good? I think we're good? Any last minute thoughts?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to suggest is just lighten your load a little bit. If there's anything there, if there's nothing there, then that's cool too, but.
I mean, I have 3 waterway. Do you want, I mean, I like all my waterway
Yeah.
committees.
I know you do.
But maybe South Coastal Harbor. I'd like to keep, I enjoy the waterways, and I think the waterways and Outlet East Cove have a lot in common with, so I like to keep in touch with both of them. I find it beneficial to kind of, you know, be able to work with the groups, so I wouldn't be eager to give either of those 2 up.
No, I'll take South Coastal if you
Okay.
want to lighten your load a little bit.
Sure.
Because you're picking up summer residents and
That's fine.
chairmanship.
Okay. So, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, me too.
All right, good. Last but not least for the evening, committee reappointment interview procedure review. Shauna's put together a packet, put together information in our packet, kind of breaking down, you know, what we have traditionally done. There's some notes about, you know, who's seeking reappointment and what vacancies we are potentially going to have. So I'm going to open it up to the board for general thoughts, how we want to move forward. Dean?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm okay with proceeding as we have been. I just wanted to note that the first bullet on the first page, all regulatory board members, when their term is expiring and they've expressed a wish to be reappointed, they're interviewed. I think we should also include the Airport Commission. We always have done that. We've interviewed Airport Commission incumbents when they're seeking reappointment.
We have.
Just as we have. I believe we've done that.
Yeah, no, we certainly did it last year. Is that not encompassed in that first bullet?
Well, I don't think they're necessarily regarded as a regulatory. I don't remember what the committee.
It's a commission.
It's a board commission.
Yeah, but I'm not sure they're, I'd have to look at the manual to see, the handbook to see if they're technically classified as a regulatory. I don't know that they are. That's the only reason we've treated them as though they're regulatory.
We interviewed
I just wanted to
everybody,
make sure they were
the
included.
incumbents last year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just want to make sure they're included. I'm going to look that up.
Additional thoughts from the board? Mike?
Yeah, I think this is fine. I would just add my exhortation, hope that we can get the business of approving the new members out of the way as quickly as possible, and put in for, and I recognize that Jeff has limitations, but as best we can do it, to start early on Tuesdays, to try to make that work, at least as a priority.
No, Shereen?
Yeah, when we're, you know, we're meeting every other, we'll start to consider meeting every other week, obviously.
Well, I would assume we would probably go to a summer
Well,
schedule. a
I'm
bit
just
later on.
wondering if, you know, if Jeff is flexible and we can still do remote activity, whether we can do something at the lunch hour sometime, just to. you know,
I
just,
mean, some of the advisory committees, I mean, we could do 2 or 3 of us. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't,
well, understandably, but I'm
Yeah.
just thinking if we could do something during the lunch hour via Zoom, it might be helpful. I don't know how that works out for you, Corey, but,
I think we can be flexible. I think we can make things work. I mean, I think we've had enough experience that we want to kind of get this done as early as possible and plug through this. So I'm open to kind of any avenue that we can kind of accomplish that.
and I think that Shauna tries to make it so we're all, you know, inclusive into the process. But I think what we really need to do is really strongly think about if we have just letting go a little bit and taking, you know, putting some, not support, but, you know, like faith in fellow select board members that they can conduct the meeting appropriately and we can review it at a different time.
Agreed. All right.
Sounds
Mr.
good.
Chair, so are you okay with having 2 members as a minimum for the
Minimum
interviews? or
for
do you-
anything outside of a regulatory,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And then 3 for a regulatory.
Yeah,
Hopefully-
majority.
Hopefully, all of them.
Ideally, all of us, but a minimum of
Yeah,
3, yeah.
majority.
So, just FYI, the handbook refers to several committees as statutory versus advisory, and the Airport Commission is called a statutory, just as the Board of Assessors. But we have 2 forms of subcommittee of the board for interviewing. We have the regulatory committee appointments is basically a committee of the whole, the subcommittee of the whole board. So we need a quorum of the full board for those interviews.
Correct.
That's what we've been doing. And the subcommittee for all other boards and committees is at least 2 members of the board.
Correct.
So that's what we've been doing. I think we should continue that.
Yep, I'm it's worked, I think, well, so I think we continue with that process. All right. Since we're in agreement with that, there's one final motion of the evening.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second, okay. All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
And I say aye. Good night, everyone.